Warning, this video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today we're going to be talking about markets and magic. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about markets, then I'm going to bring this whole magic thing into this equation. There's been an overwhelming demand for me to talk about this stuff, and I kind of owe you guys an apology because I think from being a content creator, you can only understand it from this side, right? If one of you was to say to me, for example, oh, Camel, I've made a YouTube channel and I'm getting a handful of toxic or trolling comments, right? My default answer would be, well, just ignore it. Like, who cares, right? That's just part of the game. But let me tell you, it is a lot easier said than done, okay? And you can see this because if you think about any of the big accounts on Twitter, you'll notice anytime they get a call slightly wrong or anytime the market experiences some unexpected volatility, they usually end up having to take a couple of weeks off, right? You see this all the time. It's the same pattern. It repeats over and over again. And the reason for that is simple, right? Like I said, it's much easier to say, ignore the haters and ignore the trolls than it is to actually genuinely not let it get to you ever at all. And in order to get to that stage, what I have found through doing this for around 2 years now is I kind of have to take a dismissive attitude towards some of the negativity, right? I just have to kind of be like, well, I don't care what your opinion is, right? And at the same time, I have to try to balance this with not just dismissing anyone that disagrees with me, because I don't want that to be the case. I don't want it to be a kind of dictatorship, if you will, where I can just say whatever I want and no one is allowed to challenge or correct anything I say. I definitely don't want to create that type of environment. So I try to keep the balance here where I pay attention to the comments and I'm open to being proven wrong. I'm open to being corrected. I'll issue a rebuttal from time to time if I get something categorically wrong. But at the same time, I have to kind of learn to be dismissive of the trolls and the haters. And it is a balancing act. And let me tell you, again, it is easier to say it than it is to do it. Okay, take it from me. When you're on this side of it, it is a lot easier said than done. Anyway, in developing this kind of thicker skin and slightly more dismissive approach over the past couple of years, I found that the other day when I was talking about the more esoteric stuff, the more occult stuff, I kind of had this dismissive and flippant attitude towards you guys, wherein I was saying things like, you can't handle the truth, right? And you're not even going to be open to trying to pray, let alone you think you can handle all these pockets of occult knowledge. And really, I owe you an apology, right? You're all adults. You're not emotional babies. You're more than capable of hearing some information and then choosing to believe it, disprove it, go and research it, or just say, well, I don't agree with that at all, right? So I'm not going to be shying away from this too much. And frankly, I think a lot of this is going to actually fit into today quite nicely. So I'm going to first briefly talk about this market catalyst that we may or may not have found, but it is certainly significant, something we want to pay attention to. Then we've got a secondary thing we need to pay attention to in the markets that links in explicitly, or implicitly, I should say, with magic. Before we go any further, I just want to say, okay, society turns to persecution of anything it doesn't agree with. If you have an emotional response to the information presented today, just try to push that emotion aside. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to feel emotional. It's not okay to allow that to cloud your judgment. So remember, society turns to persecution of anything it doesn't agree with. Let's get into a bit of markets and magic. The first thing I wanted to point out, just in case anyone is new here, okay, is on this channel, we've been looking for a couple of things to unfold over the next coming, say, weeks and months, okay? The first thing is the third angle. So I like to draw one angle here, then I like to draw a second angle of attack here, approximately, and then sometime in the not too distant future, the Camel Crew has been looking for a third and final near vertical angle to come in for Bitcoin to get a push up higher, and then when we break that trend line, that for me will be a big sell signal, and we'll deal with what comes next thereafter. At the same time, the Elliott wave system says that we are quite possibly going to be looking for the fifth and final wave up, and what's interesting about the fifth and final wave in the Elliott wave system for a commodity, which I believe Bitcoin is far more like a commodity than it is a stock, the fifth wave in a commodity is usually driven by fear. It is a reflection of market psychology, wherein the market participants are scared not to hold the asset. The attitude, if this is truly a commodity-driven fifth wave, should be, get me in, I absolutely need to hold this, and the price does not matter. It should be a fear of not holding the asset that drives the fifth wave. So with all that said, okay, we've been looking for a catalyst to come in to cause Bitcoin to enter this third angle and this fear-driven fifth wave. And I wonder if it could be something like this. Now, let me be clear, let me be really objective. I'm by no means calling for this to be a thing. I don't know if there's any validity to this idea at all. I just know that the charts are pointing towards something being about to show up that causes people to be forced into the Bitcoin market. And this could potentially be one way that we see it happen, okay? Balaji is speculating that the EU is bankrupt. I mean, that's not speculation, that's true. And is preparing for asset seizure. Okay, that's why they're building this registry. What's coming, according to Balaji, is not just inflation, but confiscation. And this is how they will bail out central banks. And this is pertaining to them asking people in the EU to register all of their property, including things like shares, cars, precious metals, Bitcoin, Rolexes, etc., on this kind of anti-money laundering EU asset register. And the speculation is once everyone's put all their assets on this register, then they might move to confiscate it and use that capital to bail out the central bank, which is currently bankrupt. Now, again, let me be really clear. This is not me calling for this. This is not me saying that this is likely to happen. This is simply me saying if something like this is to occur, that would certainly cause the fear of holding Bitcoin, which is the only truly non-confiscatable property that you can actually hold. Non-confiscatable, non-seizable property. Cold stored Bitcoin is the only thing you can actually own, right? So I wonder if something like this could drive that fear-driven fifth. Again, it's not a call, it's not a prediction, and it could be a number of other things, right? It could be the speculation that the US is going to add Bitcoin to its strategic reserve. Maybe that's enough for people to say, well, we better own it now before the US buys it all up. Maybe it's a combination of a bunch of things. Maybe it's bank failures. Maybe it's something that none of us can even imagine right now, okay? But like I was saying, the charts are telling us that we should be expecting not only that third and final angle to come in, not only the fifth wave to come in, but also for the fifth wave to be driven by a market psychology of fear of not holding this asset. So something like this, if it is to occur, and it is still an if, I think would certainly do it for a catalyst. The other thing I should point out whilst we're here is whatever this catalyst is, it only needs to be a perceived catalyst. Nothing actually has to happen, okay? The market just has to believe something will happen. So even if what they say is this is going to happen, or the market thinks this is going to happen, and then absolutely nothing comes of it, that doesn't really change the fact that so long as the average market participant, so long as the market in aggregate believes something like this is coming, then that should do it to see that fear-driven fifth wave come in. So a pretty wild time to be alive. And again, we still are sitting here waiting to see what exactly is going to show up that is going to cause people to perhaps see this come to fruition. The next thing that is pretty wild, okay, is the US senators are considering voting to ban Congress from trading stocks before November, okay, before November. Now, this is significant for a number of reasons, okay? First of all, this whole melt-up chart of mine has been the base case hypothesis ever since I've had this channel. And the idea was at the lows we were too bearish, we're going to have this blow off top and then enter a global recession and even slip into asset price deflation. You can see above the peak, and this peak was never predictive of price or time, it was just an arbitrary yellow squiggle, but right above the peak, you can see we've been expecting that rate cuts occur, the first cuts occur somewhere around the top of the cycle, which shortly thereafter tops and moves into this recession and this bear market. And in yellow, as you can see, I've had this here the entire time, Congress banned from owning stocks. Now, this is by no means necessary. It's not a requirement. It was simply an expectation because back here in this neighborhood, we saw them do the exact same thing with the Fed officials. They banned the Fed officials from owning stocks here. They frame it as if they're doing it for ethical reasons, right? They say things like it's not fair that they get to insider trade whilst the public remains dark. But in reality, all they really did was ban the Fed officials from owning stocks over here, forcing them to sell. And then right at the top, okay, they were essentially let out before we entered this bear market of 2022. And so the whole idea was we may well see a repeat just with Congress at the top. We may well get this squeeze to the top and then Congress get banned from owning stocks, again, for allegedly ethical reasons because it's not fair. But really, it would just be them letting them out at the top, just like they did with the Fed back here before we go into this big global recession and perhaps even asset price deflation. Now, in the interest of full disclosure and objectivity, okay, like I said, this was an expectation simply because we saw them do it with the Fed here, and they have a very, very, very long history of printing articles pertaining to this in the news, and then nothing really ever comes of it, okay? You can go back and find this has been going on for years. For years, they've been saying maybe Congress should be banned from owning stocks, and then they have some kind of vote or some kind of bipartisan agreement, whatever it is, and then ultimately the thing just gets kicked down the road. It gets postponed for another year, another 2 years, and they've literally been doing this, I think, since about 2017, and nothing has come of it. Most recently, a whole heap of people were tagging me in some news that Congress was perhaps going to be banned from owning stocks, but at the time, it said that it probably wouldn't come into effect until March of 2027. And so a whole heap of people tagged me in that and said, wow, how did you know? How did you know? But I had to kind of hold my hands up and say, well, that doesn't actually fit with the idea. That doesn't fit with it at all, because we should be expecting them to be let out at the top. And so if it's not going to happen until 2027, that says that perhaps we're not going to have this top before the end of this year, and instead there's more gas left in this goose. We are going to have this bigger, longer, more drawn out bull market. But since then, okay, as of yesterday, the Senate is now considering voting to ban Congress from trading stocks before November. Okay, now that is pretty wild, because that means they really seem to be pushing to bring this thing forward. Now, again, they have a very, very long track record of saying things like this and nothing comes of it. So I certainly don't want to be punching my fists in the air and declaring victory here. But if this thing is to be pulled forward to around November, okay, or even before November, that does entirely fit with the base case hypothesis that we would see a top come in before November of this year, which of course would qualify Bitcoin's cycle top as a left translated cycle. It would fit with the idea that currently we're priced to see rate cuts in September. Okay, and historically speaking, the market tops within about 2 months of the onset of the cutting cycle. So if we cut rates in September, as the CME is currently pricing, and then we top a couple of months later, right with them banning Congress from owning stocks before that November date, all of this would have essentially come to fruition. So again, it's a pretty wild time to be alive. This will certainly be something that is worth keeping an eye on. And if indeed it does occur before November, like I said, that fits the base case hypothesis and the expectations perfectly. And so this call led a lot of people to suddenly say, how did you know, Camel, right? How did you do it? Do you use magic? Are you some kind of magician, right? Is there something we need to know? Is there something that can be learned here? And the short answer is, no, I did not use magic for this whatsoever, okay? But I do think it's worth touching on magic, because the magic links in perfectly to the expectation that we would start to see chaos and stuff unfold right around the time of the Olympics. The Olympic ceremony is on Friday, and they will be using magic during this Olympic ceremony and during the Olympic period. So I thought what I would do is briefly outline what magic is, how it works, okay, how it is completely different to what most people perceive it to be. It's actually not as crazy as it sounds at first, and hopefully if I do my job right, you're going to see that in just a minute. And then you will see that whilst I didn't use magic to predict that Congress might be banned from owning stocks at the top, it was indeed magic that led me to the conclusion that all of this stuff would happen right around the time of the Olympics. So remember, society turns to persecution of anything it doesn't agree with. You are, of course, free to disagree. You're free to go and do your own research. In fact, it's highly recommended you go to do your own research. But all in this space of the occult, of the hidden stuff, of the esoteric stuff, there's a whole heap of people out there that make content that is demonstrably false. So what I plan to do today is to just give you an outline of this stuff so that you can go away and use what I give you today to be able to help you discern what is right from what is wrong when you are doing your own research. So what is magic? Magic is essentially manipulating thought and consciousness to produce conditions and circumstances or force your will into this reality. Okay, that's all it is. It's not pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It's not hocus pocus or cauldrons or Harry Potter or any of this kind of stuff. Okay, it's simply manipulating psychology to be able to force conditions and circumstances into this physical existence. This can be done on the individualized level, okay? You can alter your thoughts and your intentions, and by modifying your thoughts, you will modify your behaviors and your actions, and thus you will modify the conditions and circumstances in your reality. But this stuff is particularly powerful when it is done en masse. Now, I should say that there is some kind of black magic stuff out there where you see the kind of ritual sacrifices and the more kind of satanic element to this. I'm not saying there isn't any merit to that, but for what we're talking about pertaining to the Olympics, okay, that kind of stuff is neither here nor there. I should also say right now, this is not something to be played with, okay? All of this kind of occult stuff, all of this kind of esoteric stuff, it's not really for experimentation, okay? You need a very high degree, a very high vibrational consciousness to be able to do this stuff safely. And right out of the gate, we should probably talk about vibrational consciousness, because this really illustrates the issue with some of the stuff that occurs on the internet when you try to find this kind of information. You will have heard people use the term of higher vibrational consciousness, right? Raising your vibration, raising your frequency. And if you type this stuff into YouTube, you'll find a whole heap of kind of law of attraction type channels that are parroting one another, right? And they'll say things like, you need to think and feel your way into a Lamborghini, right? Or you need to focus on love and these kind of more positive emotions instead of envy and jealousy and hatred, because they're kind of negative and lower vibrational thoughts and feelings, and that will drag you down and all this kind of stuff, right? And there is some kind of almost an element of truth to this stuff, right? Almost. But the reality of these kind of law of attraction channels is they mostly serve as self-fulfilling prophecies. So the people that create a law of attraction channel will come to the conclusion they have manifested a huge YouTube channel and growth and income. And really, it acts as a self-fulfilling feedback loop, okay? Only the creators of these channels tend to benefit from those kind of videos. They produce this kind of law of attraction content. They are essentially selling a dream, right? They're selling an idea. They're selling a lifestyle that anyone can think and feel their way into a mansion or a Lamborghini, or can attract the dream husband that they've always wanted, when the absolute truth of the matter is, it's only the YouTube content creators that are benefiting here, right? They're growing their channel. They're going to sit there and tell you, I manifested 100,000 subscribers. I manifested this, that, and the other. But the reality is that the majority of the people that watch these kind of videos have little to no success thinking and feeling their way into a Lamborghini, right? And it's because, just like crypto Twitter, where you get parroting of an idea, right? You get all gaps fill, right? I mean, that's just completely nonsense. Anyone that Googles the percentage of gaps that fill or don't fill can learn that that's nonsense in 10 seconds. But no one ever does that. They just parrot each other. And it's the same with this whole kind of esoteric space. And so you'll see and hear a whole bunch of channels saying things like, love has a higher vibrational frequency than hate and envy and jealousy, and thus you must walk around in a state of love and bliss all the time. And like I said, there's some element of truth to that. But when it comes to vibrational consciousness, it's not really about walking around thinking and feeling love all the time, right? And being able to manifest your Lamborghini through thinking and feeling your way into it. All vibrational consciousness is oscillation around the truth. Okay, so if each one of these lines here represents the truth, at the bottom, we've got a low vibrational consciousness, and it intersects the truth line only a few times. 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, so let's say 4 here, okay? This is what we mean by low vibrational consciousness. We are intersecting with the truth very, very few times. This wave has a low frequency because it oscillates around the 0 line very few times. When we raise our vibrational consciousness to intersect with the truth more times, okay, we have raised from here to here our vibrational consciousness. And when you have a very, very high vibrational consciousness, it just means that you're oscillating around the truth nearly all the time, okay? So tight that I can't even draw it on my mouse. It's not sitting here saying we need to always be in a state of love and that we shouldn't be using negativity, okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the truth is belligerent. The truth is by nature at war with deception. So long as you are oscillating around the truth as much as physically possible, then you have a high vibrational consciousness. And if you do not have a high vibrational consciousness because you do not have access to this kind of hidden information, okay, then it is highly recommended you do not mess around with magic. The way to raise your vibrational consciousness is to do the introspective work, to go after the truth regardless of how it makes you feel, and to always ensure that you are in alignment with the truth. Being sure of yourself down here, saying things like, well, if God was real, he would reveal himself to me. He could just come down, right? Have you even tried to open yourself to it? Have you even tried praying? Okay, I'm not saying you have to subscribe to organized religion or whatever it is, but you have to be able to humble yourself rather than just make these conclusions until ultimately you can oscillate around the truth nearly all the time and have a high vibrational consciousness. So this is the kind of stuff you won't find on these law of attraction channels, right? You won't find that. You just find think and feel your way into a Lamborghini and everything's fine, okay? But like I said, with magic, okay, magic is just forcing your will into existence. It's aligning your thoughts and your intention to achieve a desired outcome or set of conditions and circumstances in this realm. And if you think about it, it's not that complicated or occulted, really, okay? If you're going to start with thoughts, the way you think is going to alter your behavior, is going to alter the way you interact with the world, and the way you behave is going to change what happens here in your existence, okay? It's not super complicated, it's not super occulted, and it's not about thinking and feeling and attracting love into your life or anything like that. It's just about everything starts from the mind, okay? No matter what it is, you first have to think it for it to exist. Nothing can exist without you first thinking it. And so again, magic is really just manipulating thoughts so that they all point in the same direction, okay? And if they all point in the same direction, it modifies behavior, and by modifying behavior, we can achieve a desired outcome. And that's really all there is to it, okay? That's really all there is to it. Again, it can be done on an individualized level, okay? You can alter your state of mind so that instead of thinking of yourself as a failure and as stuff that can't be accomplished, you can alter your state of mind so that you have self-belief, so that you are on a mission to find the truth, so that you live within natural law. And by doing this, it's going to manifest as a change in your behavior and character for the better, which will push you towards your desired outcome. So that's really all there is to it. And on a group level, and this is where we're going into the Olympics now, okay, this is even more powerful. The more minds that are aligned to have the same thoughts and belief systems, the more we change behavior in aggregate of a society or humanity, whatever you want to call it, and the more we change behavior in society in aggregate, the more we can magically produce a desired set of outcomes. And so this is one of those big elite occult secrets, right? They use things like Hollywood, movies, Netflix, whatever else it is. They use all of this stuff to manipulate the masses, thoughts, intentions, and beliefs. And then by doing so, they modify their behavior and character in order to produce an outcome that is desired. So can I use magic to determine when Congress is going to ban stocks? No, I can't. And it's much easier just to look back here and say, well, the Fed banned themselves back here. Probably Congress will do it there. Okay, that's all it is. That bit's not magic. But if you think about what I just said, in terms of the Olympics, what does the Olympics have going for it? Okay, the Olympics is watched by millions of people from all vantage points from all around the world. Okay, when we can manipulate people's thoughts, people's consciousness, people's beliefs, all simultaneously in aggregate because all of their attention is focused on one place at one time, now we start to be able to have mass manipulation using real occult magic. This is why the Olympics was always a very important time for me, because I know that by the time we get to the Olympic ceremony on Friday, millions and millions and millions of people all around the world, including me and probably including you, are going to be watching that ceremony. And for those of us that understand this principle, we're going to be looking for clues as to what they're trying to manifest into the future years. If you go back and watch the 2012 ceremony, okay, you will see they use this exact technique to bring about conditions and circumstances a few years later by manipulating collective consciousness to change the behavior of society in aggregate to produce a set of conditions and circumstances that was desired by the people in control. So with all of that said, that is why the Olympics is going to be important. That's why it's going to be important to see what they're cooking up for us during the Olympic ceremony. I will say this. By watching it, we become willing participants, okay? The way to watch it is to understand that they are trying to control and manipulate your mind, and you must not let them do that. You must watch as an objective observer. You must not give your energy to it. You must watch it as an objective observer and then choose to abstain from it taking your energy and from it moving and changing your thoughts and consciousness. They are going to be using this as a tool to modify the aggregate society behavior. And that change in behavior, of course, will produce conditions and circumstances over the next few years. I've got here a clip, okay, which kind of pushed me into making this video in the first place today. I'm not going to play it, and I don't care what you think of this guy, okay? That's neither here nor there. Like I said, society turns to persecution of anything it doesn't agree with. You can push your emotions aside. It doesn't matter whether you like him or hate him. It doesn't matter whether you believe he's guilty or not guilty. None of that matters for the sake of this, okay? But in this clip, he comes out on stage in a festival, and he interrupts it, and he says, guys, I want to do a bit of work here. I'm going to try to set a world record, and I want everyone on my countdown, right? He says, I want to count to 3, and on my countdown, we're going to all say, synchronized at the same time, escape the matrix, okay? Now, this is magic. Andrew knows what he is doing here. He is using magic here because he knows that the power is in the aggregate, okay? The more people you have with collective focused thoughts and intentions, the more people you have speaking these words into existence, the more power it has. So this is a form of magic. I believe he knows exactly what he's doing, okay? I absolutely believe he knows exactly what he's doing because he is planting a seed into these people's consciousness. He is asking them to participate in a ritual whereby they are pushing his narrative. So this is just another example of magic. Again, it's not super hocus pocusy, right? It's not super outside the box. And for most people, they might think this is completely benign. Well, how does saying 3 words synchronized in a crowd full of a bunch of people actually have any impact? But you will be surprised at just how much planting seeds inside of a subconscious mind this kind of thing can have, okay? This can have a huge effect at planting seeds into the subconscious mind. And again, there is huge power in focused collective intent. And that is why the Olympics is so important. That is why this is another example. And we also see this kind of thing in group prayer, right? If anyone that has ever been part of any religion knows intuitively that group prayer focused on one outcome, on one person's healing, on whatever it is, okay? Group prayer is significantly more powerful than an individualized prayer. And it is the same thing, right? It's the same principle that when you align aggregated consciousness, okay, when you align aggregated thoughts and beliefs, it produces conditions and circumstances here in this realm. And I think it's also worth pointing out here, okay, that whether or not you subscribe to these ideas, whether or not you believe it, whether or not you want to go and do your own research, okay, whether or not any of that is true or false, when we look around us, okay, when you look around at the people with the power in this world, okay, when you look around at these people at the top of the pyramid, at the top of the food chain, whatever, at the top of the finances, They all have something in common. They all like to go to these dodgy forests, right? And do their rituals and ceremonies. When you look at any of these secret society type places, what do they all have? A whole heap of rituals, a whole heap of ceremonies, a whole heap of what they call traditions or art or whatever else it is, right? But the reality is, whether we choose to believe it or not, whether we choose to shy away from it or not, okay, the people in power seem to love themselves a ritual, okay? And the reason they love themselves a ritual is because they understand this natural rule of the universe that collective and aggregated thought and intention produces conditions and circumstances in this realm. So for most of what we do on this channel, okay, we look at the charts and the charts say fear-driven fifth is coming, and then we say, okay, let's look for a catalyst, and we're still out here looking for a catalyst, not magic. When we also see things like this, as I said, we look at the melt-up chart and we say, well, we saw that here. History doesn't repeat, but it does often rhyme. Again, not magic. But when it comes to Camel, why was it always the timing of the Olympics? Hopefully you can see, based on everything I've said, the more eyes you have on something, the more focused thought you have from a group, and the bigger that group is, the more ability you have to manipulate collective behavior and thus produce conditions and circumstances in this realm. So I hope you found that useful. If you're new here, this isn't the kind of thing we do often. For the most part, okay, we just trade the charts, we find the cycle lows, and we get some positions on. Before we get into those charts, I wanted to point at this, because this absolutely fits my bias for the next few years in its entirety, okay? I am expecting a big blow-off top move that ultimately left translates, meaning it forms before November, particularly if we get that Congress ban and those rate cuts show up in the not too distant future. Then I think we are setting up indeed to have one of these completions, a big long and drawn out extended bear market into mid to late 2026. And it's during this time, I believe the big players are going to do as much accumulating as they possibly can. And then out of there, I believe we will find that 4-year cycle low for Bitcoin mid to late 2026 and enter the true super cycle up to the multiple millions of dollars a coin. I would think at least 1 million a coin over that 4-year cycle. So eyes on the prize in the short term, we got to find a pump, we got to find a fear-driven fifth, and we got to sell the top. And then the focus should become, how low down do we get? Can we get back to full exposure with all the profits and some at that 4-year cycle low? And then can we ride this thing into the 7-figure Bitcoin neighborhood? Absolutely fantastic chart from Mr. X. This is Elliott Wave. My cycle theory kind of suggests that we're going to do something very, very similar. So again, it's a wild time to be alive. In terms of the charts, okay, not a great deal has changed. The Dixie is bouncing out of that daily cycle low as expected. The big question is, can it roll over and fail? And if it does that provide a chance to not yet have a 3-year cycle low in? The longer this thing runs, the less likely it is that we haven't already seen the 3-year cycle low and we need to scratch this one off. The bond markets are still looking heavy. They are still trying to price in a rate cut, perhaps even before the September expectations. Okay, this is the 2-year yield. Once it gets down to about 4.2, okay, that is a July cut coming. Now, we're running out of time because we're very nearly at the end of the month. But again, we just saw a surprise cut from China. I wouldn't be super surprised. If it happens in September, I'll be more than happy with that because that just means we've got a few more months to run, at least I hope. Still hunting down a weekly cycle low for gold, so not much change there. Not much change for Bitcoin either, and let's see a whole heap of people wanting a nice deep pullback. I'm not so sure you're going to get it, but we're going to find out. For now, at least, long and strong, and the same with the mining stocks. And I actually entered a second S&P long as of yesterday. I'm hoping that this is going to get stopped out. We're going to get that 2 drives pattern to undercut here, find a slightly later but more legal and qualifying cycle low, and then add that position back and add a NASDAQ long at the same time. But I wanted some exposure here just in case we're about to see a early day 33 cycle low confirmed. So it did break out of the trend line. If this is breakout retest resumption, then happy days, we got in. And like I said, if I have to pay a 2% account stop here and then re-enter slightly lower down, well, I'll take that because we will have a much, much, much higher probability setup. And like I said, I'll also be adding the NASDAQ in the members section. Other than that, there's not a great deal to say, right? Still kind of wondering if we're going to get a 2 drives pattern in the indexes. Whilst that's occurring, we'll probably expect the Dow to chop around a bit more. And then I think it should be third and final angle time as we front run the onset of those cuts. The Russell 2K is also starting to push off as well, up towards about 2,700. Anything above 2,700, and I'll be happy with that for the Russell 2K. So I hope you found value here today. I hope you found this interesting. There seems to have been overwhelming demand for this kind of content, but I hope you can appreciate it's just a timing thing, right? I don't have unlimited time. The time I do have, I want to be focused on nailing down the rest of this call. This call's been absolutely fantastic. The base case hypothesis has been holding strong for a long, long time. Slowly but surely, even the smaller details, such as the Congress ban, right, and the fear-driven fifth and those kind of things, they're starting to show up. The surprise rate cuts in China, one by one, these dominoes are falling. And my focus really wants to be on nailing this down, right? I want to be able to get out at the top. I want to be able to flip short. I want to be confident that I'm not selling too early or selling too late or anything like that. First and foremost, I am a trader. This is what I do. And so my focus wants to be on nailing the top of this call, flipping short, selling, like I said, and then we're going to have to be looking to potentially, if I continue to be right, figure out where to hide and how to protect the capital in a downturn. It's no easy feat. It's a lot easier said than done. So I know there's a great demand for this kind of occult stuff. Let me know what you think. And just try to be a bit patient with me. Because like I said, I don't have a huge amount of free time at the moment because these markets are so wild. Other than that, I hope you're doing well in life. I hope you consider what I said today. And until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.